Posted by u/mascoot_skutma. The time a spirit protected me. First, the backstory for context. At the time of my paranormal experience, the neighborhood that our house is in was not the safest. It was a very lower income neighborhood in the heart of a large metropolitan city in the early stages of development and gentrification. When we moved in, 3 of the 5 houses bordering our property were legit drug houses. In my neighborhood at that time, it was best to keep to yourself, mind your own business, and not bring any attention to yourself. Our immediate next door neighbors had constant traffic in and out of their house, and it was very obvious what was going on: drugs. We always minded our business, but I tried to still be cordial and say hi and wave if my neighbor was outside at the same time as me. He was always polite to me, but we had very limited interaction. But sometimes some of the neighbors' customers would make me very uncomfortable by watching me, catcalling me or saying sexually and racially derogatory things if I was outside, doing yard work, taking trash out, or getting out of my car. I would just ignore them and quickly go inside. But these interactions made me very uncomfortable, and I didn't feel safe if I was home alone without my husband. 2 weeks after the paranormal experience that I am about to share, we woke up in the middle of the night to a lot of commotion, and when I looked out our bedroom window, I saw the cops raiding our neighbor's house. I found out later from news reports that the owners were charged with distributing heroin, powder cocaine, fentanyl, and crack cocaine. They also had a large stock of illegal firearms, a significant amount of cash. And one of the individuals living there was on the run, wanted on murder and robbery charges, and he was hiding out in this house during the paranormal incident that I am about to describe. Now to the paranormal part. It was late one night, after midnight, and my husband and dog were asleep in our bedroom. I was in the kitchen and bent over the trash can to take the bag out and then take it out to our recycling bin on the side of my house so that the trash did not stink up my kitchen overnight. We made chicken fajitas that night, so we had the packaging from the raw chicken inside the trash can. To get to the bin outside, I just walked out my front door and to the side of the house due to the way out property is set up. When I was bent over the trash can getting ready to pull the bag out, I felt what I thought was my husband walk up right behind me and lean over me like he was about to hug me. He is 6'3", I am 5'4", so he towers over me. I giggle and bend down further to dodge him and turn around quickly as I say, "I hug you first." And just as I turn and go to grab him around the waist to give him a bear hug, I saw a woman standing in the middle of my kitchen about 4 feet away from me. She put her arms out towards me with her palms open, like you would do when telling someone to stop, and she floated/glided quickly towards me while she mouthed no. And as soon as she got inches from me, she literally vanished into thin air. In one instance she was gliding so quickly towards me, and the next, she just disappeared. I did not hear anything, but her face had an expression of panic, and even though I did not hear her yell it, her mouth screamed no. This happened so fast, literally in a span of 2 to 3 seconds. The only details about her appearance that I could recall was that she was completely solid, not transparent or translucent. She was wearing a long black long-sleeved dress with a double-layered scallop collar. The cuffs of her sleeve were slightly belled. There were little white buttons going down the entire length of the front of her dress. She was about my height, her eyes were strikingly light blue, and she had long, very thick, tight curly, and very unruly jet black hair. She had pale skin and she was floating a few feet above the ground. It happened so quickly, and those were the only details I could immediately remember. I was in such shock and disbelief. Immediately after she vanished, I stood still for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, then I bolted past where she was just a few seconds before and ran into my bedroom screaming for my husband to wake up. He instantly jumped out of bed and grabbed me and asked what was wrong, and I started crying, and all I could manage to sputter out was, "Someone is in our house." Before I could explain further, he grabbed his pistol from his nightstand and ran out of the bedroom to find the intruder. Our dog, 90-pound pit bull, who was in our bedroom at the time, also woke up and immediately started growling and barking at the entrance to our bedroom. He got in between me and the bedroom door frame and was barking and growling incessantly. I heard my husband calling for the dog for backup, and the dog refused to go to my husband, which is very out of character. My husband came back to our bedroom and said he didn't find anyone and that all of the doors and windows are locked and there was no sign of a break-in. I told him he wouldn't find anything or anyone because it wasn't a person but a spirit. At this point, my skeptic husband rolled his eyes and started berating me for waking him up with stupid ghost stories. But when he saw that I was so legitimately scared and shaken up, he sat down and asked me to explain what happened. After I told him the story, he just chalked it up to me hallucinating due to stress from work and insomnia, and held me until I finally fell asleep. The next day, I FaceTimed my mom and told her what happened because I knew she would believe me because she grew up in a haunted house and has seen apparitions before. I just needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy or hallucinating. When I described what the woman looked like, she fell silent and had a look of shock on her face. She told me that the woman that I described was my great-grandmother Gabriella, who my mother was extremely close to. She died before I was born. I have never seen a picture of her because the only photos that the family had of her were in a box that was lost in the 50s during my grandparents moved to the States. However, my mother said that my grandmother still had my great-grandmother's dress that she made herself and wore almost every day. The next weekend, I took a trip a state away to see my grandmother with my mother, and I told her what happened. We spent the day in her attic looking for the dress. My mother found it in a suitcase, and when she pulled it out, I was in disbelief. It was the same dress that the woman I saw was wearing. Long black dress with slightly flared/belled sleeves, small white buttons along the length of the front of the dress, and the unmistakable double-layered white collar with the scalloped edges. After discussing everything with my mother and grandmother, we all believe that on that night, my great-grandmother Gabriella stopped me from taking the trash outside to protect me from someone outside. It is the only thing I can think of, especially considering the contents crime and questionable people that were always present outside of my front door, so close to me. I truly believe that if I had taken the trash out that night, I may have seen something that I shouldn't have, drug deal in progress, or been assaulted by one of the neighbor's customers that would threaten and sexually harass me. Luckily for us, after the drug raid, the neighbor's house was foreclosed, a developer bought the house and tore it down to build a new home. The neighborhood has done a 180 and been cleaned up, and our property has increased in value tenfold since this happened 4 years ago. It's a genuinely safe neighborhood now, but after that experience, I will never ever walk out my front door by myself in the middle of the night again. Even if it means waking up to a stinky kitchen. Posted by you/Momo52915. A man and a little girl showed up at my front door last night. Last night at around 10 p.m. my boyfriend and I were sitting in the living room trying to find a movie to watch on Amazon Prime Video. We have video surveillance cameras everywhere outside. Two that point to the front door at different angles, one for the backyard and one for the side of the house. The monitor screen is kept in the living room on a table next to the recliner that I was sitting in. I just sat down for not even 5 minutes, then I heard a child's voice come over the monitor. The voice said hello. I thought to myself for a minute, fuck, does my son have his bedroom window open and is yelling through the window for some reason and the camera is picking it up because there is a camera next to his bedroom window? Then I remembered. No, it can't be. Because he was sleeping in my bed. I called up to him and he answered. I look at the monitor screen and I see a man, who appeared to be very tall. He was wearing a red and white flannel shirt. He was holding a little girl's hand. She looked like she had striped long sleeves with frizzy blonde hair. They were walking up the steps to get into our entryway, and I turned to my boyfriend and said, somebody is here. We live in the middle of absolute nowhere. We live by a swamp. My closest neighbors are bears and coyotes and a couple Amish houses about a mile or so down the road. So, there are never ever any people, at least that we know of, who go walking down our street pitch black with no street lights, on a back road at 10 p.m. at night, so it seemed very strange to us. Just as the man and the girl get to our front door, my boyfriend opens the door and they were gone. Not a single trace or sign of them. My boyfriend goes outside by the road to see if he could see any cars, but there was nothing. We thought maybe they were having car trouble and stopped for help, but there were no signs of that being a possibility. I let the dog outside and my boyfriend went outside with a flashlight, but nothing was there. We watched the camera footage and the people coming to the door never recorded. We reviewed old camera footage and saw nothing that looked or sounded like that. We don't even know people that look like that or ever have anybody that could have possibly come over that looked like that. My boyfriend does not believe in ghosts. But seeing that we had no explanation for it, I think he changed his mind. We have lived in this house for 4 years and I personally have never experienced anything until last night. My boyfriend admitted that the one night I was at work he saw something moving in the yard and thought it was an animal, but went out to look and nothing was there, but my son's tire swing was swing back and forth like crazy. My son has been complaining for the past few months that he doesn't like to sleep in his bed because it sounds like something is crawling around under his bed and his bed shakes. The original part of the house was built in the 1800s and was used as an old school house. An addition was put onto the house 20 years ago to make it bigger. The old schoolmaster used to live across the street in a house that is no longer there. I talked to my boyfriend today, and we both said that what happened is really weird, and we've come to terms with it probably being a ghost sighting. I know I'm not crazy because he saw them and heard the voice too. I've seen many ghosts in my lifetime. I just wondered, what took so long for me to see one here? What bothers me is that it seemed like they wanted to get my attention and it makes feel very uneasy. A few days leading up to this I would sit in the living room and just feel overwhelming dread and terrible anxiety. After seeing them, I don't feel any of that anymore. So weird. Posted by you/top_examination 5853. My ghost/demon experiences. Hi everyone. I'm new here. English is not my first language, so I apologize for any mistakes. I had a few encounters. My encounters: 1 St. When I was 10, my eldest brother was in high school. I'm the youngest of 3. I have 2 older brothers. My parents learned that the high school has a church service in one of the buildings. They thought to give it a try, they loved it, we loved it, so we joined the church. Now the school has 3 halls. The main hall is an old building, the second hall was new, the third hall is an very old building, built in 1949. The building has a lot of history. Now the Sunday school were held on the pavement behind the hall and in front of the classrooms. As we were busy, I got an super uneasy feeling. I looked up and saw a black figure running back and forth. I asked the teacher what it was. He saw nothing, but I could still see it. He started to look uncomfortable cause I kept asking him. When we were done, I ran to my mother and told her. She freaked out and called my grandpa. He told her to pray for me. As young as I am, I couldn't understand why they were so freaked out. So my mother explained as best as she could to a 10-year-old. When I'm older, she would explain. So I shrugged and never thought about it. That was till I got older. After that, I can feel them, not strong, but it was there. Second experience happened in the same building as the first, only it was in the classrooms part. When I was 14, I joined the same high school my brothers are in. We had the 8th grade concert. My homeroom were on the 2nd floor. It was very dark. As a friend and I went up the stairs, I suddenly got a feeling something was very out of place. I wanted to turn around and run. As I looked up, I saw a small child. I freaked out and ran. My friend got our bags and asked what was going on, so I explained. A grade 12 guy overheard our conversation, but his face were scrunched up and said I thought it was only my imagination. When I asked, he said he saw the child every day since he came to the school 5 years ago. But nobody believed him. After that, the feeling of presences got stronger. After this, my mother explained to me that I have a sixth sense about spirits/demons. Sometimes I can only see black figures, but I can always feel if something is off. Third experience, also same building. I was 17 at this point. My friend and I were always some of the first to arrive at school. It was winter, so it was still dark. A teacher came and asked if we can take her bag to her class, on the 2nd floor old building. We said sure, and after we said yes, she called the cafeteria and told the man working there to give us coffee if we go there, her thank you to us. As we walked, we got an uneasy feeling. We just swept it under the rug, as it is a common feeling. We continued to walk, went into the class, put the bag under the desk, locked the door and turned to leave. Suddenly we heard footsteps. We took our flashlights and shined it to the direction. It stopped and we saw nothing. So we turned and started to walk again, and the footsteps sounded up again. We looked, still nothing, so we decided to get out of there fast. So we walked. The footsteps also started up again. We speed walked. The footsteps also got faster, and then we full-blown ran, and the footsteps matched up. We got out of the building, and we heard the footsteps run past us. We looked and swore up and down to not go in the building at that time, ever again. Fourth experience. This happened after a year I was out of high school. My mother and I went to a mall. As we walked in, I got a dreadful feeling. I was like, not this again. Cause of the past, I knew what it meant. We walked around and went on a little shopping spree. We walked into a certain store and I told my mom we need to leave. This is not an uneasy feeling, but a full-blown hatred and angry feeling. Something dangerous. We turned to leave. As we started to walk, something grabbed around my neck and started to press on my windpipe. I struggled to breath and I prayed and it disappeared. I ran out of the mall. I started to cry. My mom said something attacked her. So I called my grandpa and I explained what I felt and what happened. My grandpa took a deep breath and he said those were demons. After that, I can feel more than just spirits. Fifth, my husband and I went to a village to look at a house. As we stopped, I got an ice cold feeling. Alarm bells in my head went off. I refused to get out of the car. My husband looked at me weirdly, but I just kept saying no. Suddenly the feeling of something going on got overwhelming that I started to beg my husband to leave. I started to get a panic attack, so we left. I burst in tears and said something is very wrong with that house. Something very evil is lurking there. My husband thought I were nuts, till he talked to a friend who lived in that village. He told him what went down with me. His friend looked shocked and said, at least you listened to her and didn't move in. He looked at me and said, you saved you and your husband from scars. My husband and I looked confused at each other, and the guy said, we call that the demon house. People who move in there leave the next day. The longest someone lasted in that house was a week. We don't know what happened there, but nobody wants to live there. 6th, after I had my daughter, I experienced a lot of sleep paralysis. But one wasn't the same. One night I woke up, it felt as if something weighed me down. Suddenly I couldn't breathe. I tried to wake my husband up but nothing happened. I started to pray in my head and again it disappeared. I then remember the neighbor said that a maid died in that room of an heart attack. So I blessed the house. Afraid of it doing something to my daughter. Also the hallway smelled like someone baking, it smelled so sweet. And no one were baking. Not my neighbors, nothing. 7th my husband's grandma died a year or two ago. I had my twins, they were 6 months old when she passed. As I bathed them they looked past me into the corner and started to laugh. I looked behind me, and saw nothing. I got a comfort feeling like there is not danger. And I smelt a scent that smelled like his grandma. My twins continued to laugh and cooed. After a while I just said, "Grandma, I'm so glad you came to say goodbye, but you can't stay here too long, we will miss you but you need to leave." After a minute the twins stopped looking into the corner and didn't laugh/talked at the corner again. I called my mother-in-law about what happened. She didn't think much of it, but my father-in-law asked if I asked her to leave. I said yes. He was like, "Good." But before they passed I got a feeling someone is going to die. I never knew who and when. I still to this day feel them. Sometimes see them but I steer clear of it when I can. Posted by you/here for laugh 16. One encounter where I was petrified. I stayed the night at my best friend's often. I pretty much lived at her house half of the time until I moved states as a teenager. I've had plenty of homes with spirits but I never minded as long as they weren't malicious. At her house though there was something evil in the basement. Every time we had to do laundry down there we would run and swap loads or grab clothes as fast as we could and run back up the stairs. The atmosphere was so heavy down there. Her room was on the main level, then moved to the upstairs attic later on. Since the house was old the stairs were creaky and you knew which stair someone was standing on because they made a particular creak. Well, the malicious energy would walk up the stairs late at night. You would hear the door open, it'd walk up each stair to the top, then it's like it would always just disappear. Well, one night we were up really late. My best friend fell asleep and I was laying in the bed opposite of her trying to sleep. The attic was dark besides the light in the stairwell. I grew up with horrible insomnia from trauma, so it was pretty normal for me to lay in the dark just listening. Ha! Well, the door opened. Each stair creaked. No big deal. Until the malicious energy went past the top of the stairway and I heard it walking towards me. Each step was heavier than the last. It walked all the way until it was in between both of our beds. The energy was so heavy. I was petrified. I hid under my blanket like the 11-year-old I was until I felt like it left and I could breathe again. I jumped up, turned the TV on, turned the light on and climbed into my best friend's bed and woke her up. I will never forget that fear. It was scarier that it never went past the top of the stairway. But of course when I'm the only one awake it walked all the way up to me. This probably doesn't sound scary but it was at age 11. Posted by you/halfmast. Did my mum rescue me from an evil spirit? When I was a child, around 5 years old, I remember having a recurring nightmare in which I was trying to run and crawl down my hallway to my parents' bedroom, only to be dragged back towards my own room by something I could never see. This dream would make me scream and cry in the night. In classic dream fashion, when I tried to scream no noise would come out. I still remember this dream vividly as an adult. As time went on my mother and father both claimed to see shadows in different parts of the house. My mother saw one in the doorway of my room and my father saw what looked like the back of a set of legs leaving the kitchen. On the back of this my mother concluded that the source of my screaming and crying in the night could be because of a ghost. So she decided to bless my room by dripping holy water in each corner and having a conversation with this possible entity. She says she spoke sternly and clearly and said something along the lines of, "This is our house now and this is my child. This is his room. You leave us alone. You had your time and now it is our turn here." I will say at this point I am 32 years old and I am completely unreligious and have been my whole life. My mother remains a regular churchgoer and regularly prays for various reasons. I have no reason to believe that there was ever a ghost or entity attaching itself to the youngest member of the family, attaching itself to me. But after my mother blessed my room and had her conversation with this ghost, I never had that dream again and I never woke screaming and crying again. Probably just coincidence. Right?